Your card just got declined. Your balance? Zero. That sinking feeling? Now imagine an entire kingdom running on empty. The most powerful monarch in Europe flat broke. But this isn't just about a king. It's the story of how one royal overdraft helped spark the French Revolution, invented the stock market, and created a financial weapon that's still being used on you right now. And it all started with a cake he never even ate. Let's set the scene. France, 1715. King Louis XIV, the Sun King, has just died. He left behind a legacy of incredible palaces, like Versailles and endless wars. He left behind a legacy of golden palaces and a financial black hole. The French government was bankrupt. Its debt was 3.3 billion livres. That's roughly the entire GDP of France for 16 years. The new king, Louis XV, and his financial minister are handed this impossible task. How do you pay for your grandfather's ego? Their solution was diabolically simple. They just didn't. They created a financial instrument called a visa, a promise to pay later. But the interest was piling up. For decades, they kicked the can down the road, until it reached a young, idealistic, and hopelessly out-of-touch king, Louis XVI. Enter Louis XVI. He's not a monster. He's just in over his head. His solution? Hire a financial wizard, a man named Jacques Necker. Necker had a radical idea. Be transparent. He published a book, The Compte Rendu au Roi, the Royal Treasury's accounts. For the first time ever, the public could see where their tax money was going. The people saw that 50% of the entire national budget was going to a single line item, interest payments on the old debt. And who was collecting this interest? Not the poor, not the farmers. It was the aristocracy and the church, the very people who paid no taxes. The public was furious. The powder keg was ready. But Louis XVI needed one more thing to spark the explosion, and he found it in a war. France decided to help the American colonists fight the British. It was a victory for liberty and a financial disaster for France. The cost of the American Revolution pushed the French treasury over the cliff. The king was totally, absolutely, and completely broke. With no money left, Louis XVI is forced to do the unthinkable. He has to ask the people for more taxes. He calls the Estates General, a meeting of the nation's representatives. This meeting hadn't happened in 175 years. It was a sign of pure desperation. What happened next is history. The Third Estate, the common people seized power, stormed the Bastille, and the French Revolution began. But the real, silent revolution was financial. The new government had a problem. How do you fund a revolution and run a country with no credit? Their answer? They confiscated all the land from the church and the fleeing aristocracy. But you can't pay soldiers with land. So they created a new form of money, backed by this land. They were called assignats, the world's first widespread experiment with fiat currency, not backed by gold, but by real estate. It failed spectacularly. They printed too many. Hyperinflation hit. At its peak, an assignat was worth less than 1% of its original value. Sound familiar? So a king's debt caused a revolution that created hyperinflation. Ancient history, right? Wrong. The financial panic and the need to stabilize Europe after the Napoleonic Wars led directly to the rise of Rome, the most powerful financial family you've then never heard of, the Rothschilds. They'd perfected what the French kings failed at, lending to governments. They built a network so fast and so efficient, they knew about Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo days, before the British government. And they made a fortune by buying up the market before the news broke. This model private finance funding public debt became the blueprint for the entire modern world. The bonds you buy, the national debt your country holds, the central banks that set your interest rates. It is all a direct descendant of the system created to clean up the mess that started with a bankrupt king in Versailles. So the next time you look at your credit score or hear a news report about the national debt, remember the Sun King. Remember that the line between a declined credit card and a fallen empire is thinner than you think. Finance isn't about numbers. It's about power. And history is the ledger where it's all recorded. This was the debt that built our world. But what about the company that owned a country? In the next video, we're talking about the British East India Company, a corporation with its own army, its own laws, and the power to crush empires for profit. In the next video, we're talking about the British East India Company, a corporation with its own army, its own laws, and the power to crush empires for profit. If you think corporations are powerful today, you haven't seen anything yet. Subscribe so you don't miss it.